Hey folks, before we get the podcast started, I just want to let you know that we do have some background noise during some of this conversation. And also we had some internet troubles towards the end that causes the video portion of the podcast to get a little bit glitchy in the second half. So I want to make you aware of that up front. That way, hopefully it won't be as distracting for you as those things happen. And with that said, enjoy the podcast. Welcome to the Creek, Midweek, changing things up again on you.
Come on now, people. Come on now, people. Come on now, people. Gonna praise the Lord. Come on now, church. Come on now, church. Come on now, church. Gonna praise the Lord.
Oh yeah, that's right. We back with episode 6 of the Creek Midweek. Changing it up again on you.
Keep them guessing.
I'm Austin Upchurch, your host. I'm here with Zach Siler again. Seemed to be a popular guest last week. Zach, well done.
It was fun. It was fun. Glad to be back.
Yeah, I think this week it's the top button's going to really excel our numbers. The fact that you have the top button.
Yeah, that right there, that's where the anointing rests. So that's on me.
Right. The throat. That's where your air supply, your Holy Spirit air supply.
That's right.
We're here with the big cat this week, Lance Freeman.
Yes, there he is.
Boom.
What's up?
For those of you who don't know, Lance is our worship leader at the Williamsburg campus down there in Williamsburg, bulls.
Yeah, baby. Winsburg.
Oh, boy. So Lance going to chat with Zach and I. And much like last week, we have very little plan, but lots of passion.
So much passion that the podcast probably can't contain it.
Definitely the audio podcast can't contain it. That's why we had to do video.
Yeah.
For all these.
If you're listening in your car, you're driving down the road, you're listening in your car, just go ahead, pull over, pull up your phone, get on YouTube, watch the thing. It's just going to be better. You need to see people's face.
Yep. Or if you don't have that opportunity, close your eyes. Unless you're driving, don't close your eyes. Just imagine 3 adolescent male youths in their mother's basement doing a podcast. Just whatever picture.
And you about nailed it.
Yeah, whatever picture you got, you pretty much got it. Got it nailed. Because that's pretty much our level of maturity. But it's all good. We're going to have fun. Last week we had a good time. Again, thanks for being on then, Zach. But I want to let folks know before we get into much content here that, like we've kind of said every week, the podcast changes week to week. And there are some significant changes coming either next week or the following week. And so you definitely want to stay tuned. We will be continuing the podcast. We're just thinking through the content itself and the branding and the name and all that sort of stuff. You know, this is kind of a new thing we've done during the COVID-19 outbreak, and we launched it sort of quickly to get some content out for you. So, as always, we're trying to think through the best ways to utilize our time and to get content out there and who our audience is and all that sort of stuff. So, there will be some changes. Not 100% sure what those changes are at the moment, but they're coming. And so different ideas have been floated, but we're not ready to put ourselves in a box of what's going to happen exactly. So
No boxes.
No boxes. And we will just have to see. Let's see. We'll just have to see what happens. Anything could happen.
Yeah.
All right. So Big Cat's with us this week, Lance Freeman. Should I call you Big Cat the whole time or Lance?
Sure.
I'll call you Sure. Fine. That's whatever. If you want to be called Sure, I can call you Sure.
That's my name.
So, Sure. We're going to get some things kicked off here. Why don't you let people know who you are exactly, Lance, and sort of what your situation is at home? You got any wives? You got any kids?
Any wives?
Got a couple wives. No kids that I claim. That's a lot of questions in one, friend.
Who are you?
So, yeah, I am Lance. I am also known as Big Cat, thanks to playing tennis at Western Kentucky University back in the day. And my buddies call me that. So that's carried over a little bit. And I have 3 kids. I have 2 boys. I've got a 5-year-old boy named Jonah. I've got a 2.5-year-old boy named Jude. And then I've got a 5-month-old baby girl named Grace. And I am married to a female named Kara. And we have a great life.
Awesome. So just side note, Zach, I didn't realize that whenever you were the water boy for the tennis team, they let you say you played tennis there, but that's pretty cool, isn't it?
Oh,
There's a lot of water that needs passed out, guys.
I guess
Those
that's-
guys
it gets
are really
going.
tired. They work really hard.
I guess that's considered being part of the team, Lance. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, they gave me a jersey or at least a shirt to wear.
Yeah, it's good that
Jersey,
you have.
don't wear jerseys in Tennessee. He doesn't even know. We've already.
Say, yeah, exactly.
So I have this friend who his name is Gavin Durson, and Gavin was the mascot for the University of Kentucky. And so they would get like their, what do they call it? Spirit pack? Is that what it's called? Where you get like all your clothes, like your branded clothes. You know what I'm talking about?
Like at the beginning of the school year?
Yeah. For like the team, you get your travel gear and all that stuff. So anyway, it was coming up on his first year being the mascot. It was coming up on the time for them to get their spirit pack. Right? That's what it's called, isn't it?
Probably.
It sounds right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Nobody's helping me out here. We're gonna go with it. So it was time for him to get that, and he said he was pumped because he was like, "Man, I'm gonna get, these clothes that say UK basketball. The shirts, the jackets, all the stuff, and people are gonna think I'm on the ball team." And so he was pumped because nobody would know the difference. So he said he goes to pick up his spirit pack, and he opens it up, and everything says UK cheerleading. So he's considered a part of the cheerleading team. But anyway,
Oh boy.
that's what that made me think of.
I do feel like we should note. If you're watching on video, Lance Big Cat Freeman doesn't always have that handsome beard he's rocking right now.
This is true.
That's new to quarantine.
Yeah.
So
Co-beard 19.
and I'm telling you what, I'm all here for it. It looks awesome.
And also, video watchers can check and see Zach's facial hair coming in quite nicely as well.
Oh yeah.
It looks like I got the mange. It's not great.
The plan is keep the beard growing until we can gather again. That's kind of the thought.
Yeah. So another friend of ours, his name's Tom. His wife is Sarah, who sings at the church, and Tom helps out in production, all kinds of stuff. So we got this thing going where we always hang out, and we haven't been able to hang out, obviously, because of this whole quarantine thing. So Lance and myself and Tom are growing our facial hair. They're growing their beards, and I'm just letting random hairs grow on my And then we get together. We're just going to, for the first time after this whole thing, we're just going to go ahead and shave it all into a mustache and leave it for the night, and then enjoy good company and then get back to normal maybe the day after. I'm definitely not rocking a mustache after that night. I don't know what Lance has in store for me, but I'm just going to go ahead and say, don't have to keep the mustache because it ain't staying.
We won't get you're not going to bless the people on Sunday with that thing when we get back together?
No.
What?
No.
I'm pretty sure Pastor Trevor has forbid it.
Yeah. Actually, one time he came in. So for those of you who don't know, I used to have longer hair, much longer hair than I have right now. And he came into my office one time and he said, "I don't care what you do with your hair. You can have it as long as you want it. You can have it as short as you want it. But I just ask that you never have just a mustache."
Why did he say that? Why did he say that though?
I don't know. I don't know what brought it on. He just popped into my office and said that. So I said, you know what? Okay. I made a mental note and I said, you know what? Man doesn't want me rocking a mustache. So there we go.
My point was there a time in history where you had a mustache and he had to sit through it on Sunday?
Sadly, yes.
There might have been, and you know what?
There's some history there.
For our YouTube viewers who are watching, maybe I'll throw a picture of that up right now for everyone to
That'd be
enjoy.
pretty good. Why don't you bring that
Tell
up?
you what, it was not my brightest moment.
Well, I'm going to say this, Lance. I've noticed this beard in basically social media posts because I haven't seen you. Honestly, this is the first time I've seen your face animated, not in a still picture since this whole thing started, didn't it?
We had a staff meeting, but you weren't paying attention.
Oh, sweet.
You were at the beach, so you're at the beach.
Oh,
so you
yeah.
were busy doing
That's
other
right.
things.
I went down to the beach during the quarantine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do think it looks really nice, Lance. I vote for you keeping that thing.
Me too.
I just
Definitely.
shaved the neck. Kara was talking a lot of trash.
About the
and
neck
my
beard.
dad was like, "Are you going to shave your neck?"
Yeah, man.
Because it looked really gross.
You don't want a neck beard.
And I was rocking the neck beard too. And then I trimmed it a little bit after strong encouragement from my wife. So
I will say this. this is just my opinion, and I feel like I do have, some level of platform to stand on when it comes to facial hair.
Beard authority. We call that beard.
Pretty
authority.
much any.
We
sort
call
of
that.
hair.
What do we call that?
We call that beard authority.
Beard authority. That's right. I feel like it definitely knocks your masculinity, just first impressions level up. Like, I would say you were riding around in life at a solid 6
before,
and you're an 8/9, maybe 8.4 right now at least. Just
Where does that put Zach?
Well, Jack Sparrow over there. He's.
What about if it was just this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, there you go. That's solid.
That's solid.
You need a monocle. If you had a monocle, you would be.
I don't have a monocle, but I was going to save these for later. I do have these.
Oh, great.
Are those guitars? Oh my gosh.
For those listening, you should just watch. But Zach has a little stick mustache and a little stick with glasses that basically are golden guitars. They look like a Prince guitar or something, though.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I feel like the podcast needed a little bit more swag or something. I don't know if that's exact. I mean, look at that.
Swag, yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, you're ready
Full
to
on.
go.
Got his New Year's kit out. Okay. Sorry, folks. Let's move this thing forward a little bit. So last week, Zach, we talked a lot, but we didn't really get into, and I think we mentioned this as we were wrapping it up, sort of your background as far as church and that sort of stuff. So we're gonna have a little bit of discussion coming up. But before we do that, why don't we all just kind of let people know where we came from as far as our church background, and kind of that gives people an idea of our foundation and maybe some issues we've had to work through as we've become this melting pot of denominations at the creek. So, Zach, you want to start us off?
Yeah. So mine is my story is a little bit chaotic as it relates to church because, so I grew up going to this church called Panko Community Church, and it was actually started as a Mennonite church. So it wasn't Mennonite when I was going there, but that's how it was founded. And so I was going there. My mom went there when she was a kid. I would say I grew up in a charismatic home. But I went to a Baptist private school. So Mennonite church, charismatic home, Baptist private school, and that was for the longest time. And then that's how I grew up. And kind of went to different churches as I got older. When I got to high school, I started going to church with some of my friends, and they went to all kinds of different churches. So I was kind of introduced to all kinds of different ways to do church that way. And then when I went to college, that's when I kind of got serious with my faith, where I was like, hey, you know what? I'm really going to give this thing a shot, or I'm not going to do this at all. Because up until then, I've heard the term, and I think it is true, is like, it was like a borrowed faith. Mm. You know, it's like, this is what my mom taught me to do. And yes, I have a relationship with the Lord, and yes, I believe that he is real, but am I really living in dedication to what I say I believe, or am I just kind of dabbling in it? And kind of came to the realization that it was more of a dabble. So I decided my senior year in college that I was, you know what, I'm going to give this thing a shot. And so I really dedicated my life to the Lord. Me and a friend of mine, his name's Clay Bishop, we kind of went through that together. And then when we moved back home after college, we started going to a Pentecostal church. And so I was there for a long, long time. And I would say, as far as all that stuff, I would probably, if someone asked me, I would say, well, I probably lean charismatic. That's definitely more of what I come from, just because my home was that way. And then coming to the creek, there's just, everybody from everywhere, right? And so at first it was strange because all I knew is everybody believes the same way about literally everything as it relates to theology and faith and stuff in the churches that I've been a part of. There's not a lot of disagreement, especially amongst the people that are working there. But when I came to the creek, that wasn't the case. But it was a beautiful thing because I learned to realize, like, some of this stuff is important, but it doesn't have to be an argument between these people who have common goals. And we can talk about this, and it's okay. Nobody's gonna get mad, and we can learn from each other, and I can see value in other people's theology and other people's preferences. And we can actually add to each other's lives and faith rather than kind of saying, you know what, you don't think like me, so my way's better than yours, and kind of that spiritual ego thing that can happen. So, I mean, that's kind of what's happened to me, and being at the Creek, learning from everybody who comes from different backgrounds it's done nothing but really enrich my faith, I think.
Yeah. I came from pretty much a line of Baptist churches. My father was not particularly religious and didn't attend church, and he remarried a lady who was a Christian, and so she said, hey, we're going to go to church, and so we did that, and I made a profession of faith when I was very young. I was in third grade. Basically, I was afraid of going to hell, and so my understanding was that Jesus could save me from that, and so I wanted Jesus. And so that was I don't think that that's a great complete reason to follow Jesus, but that was the first step for me. And so I would say over the years, I doubted that along the way a few times, but I've landed in a place where I realized as I look back that that's when my relationship with Jesus started. And that was the first step. That was the foundation. And over the years, I've grown in understanding of what Jesus has done for me fully. And that it's not just about escaping a scary place. And obviously, as I've grown as a human being in age and maturity, realizing that. And so that was when my faith journey began, I would say, for sure. And I was in a small Baptist church in Science Hill, Kentucky when that happened. Brother Albert McKinney was the pastor. And fun fact, our switcher, who runs our switcher now in London, at the London campus, at our broadcast campus, Jennifer Swartz, that's actually her father. And so...
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was really cool one day. So she started running camera. She started serving on the production team and started running camera. And one day she said, you know who my dad is? And I was like, well, no. And she told me, and I was like, what? So she's there on our team, a team that I was leading at the time, running camera, and her dad is the person who led me to Jesus. And it was really cool. And he's since passed.
Man, that's awesome.
So that was really
I wonder
awesome.
if she told him. I wonder if she told him about it.
Well, he's passed. He passed away before that, I believe. So, but anyway, so yeah, I was in that church and then moved on to a different Baptist church, but very, I wouldn't say very, but fairly fundamental, fairly rigid in what we believe, not extremely open to other churches or other influences. And I'm not sure that was an intentional thing, but it definitely, there was a culture of, we kind of know the correct way and we're going to stay in our lane, and we're not really going to commingle with other denominations or things like that, and have outside influences and stuff. So there was a culture like that. So, coming into this culture was, a sort of a church culture shock for me, but it was definitely something that I was craving, that Jesse was craving, and we were really happy when we felt like it was definitely a godsend. And the idea of a first order doctrine or a second order doctrine and that sort of thing, like you kind of alluded to a second ago, Zach, things that we hold as important, that there are levels of that there are the first order, which are very important, and then there's second order things that are more opinionated. Some of it's, whatever, it's kind of gray, not really, but grayer than the first order ones. They matter less. That idea was completely foreign to me before my exposure to the Creek. So that's sort of where I came from. What about you, Lance?
Well, similar to Zach, I had a bit of an upbringing where there was a lot of changes with our church situation. I grew up when I was very young in Pentecostal type churches, probably up until I was probably 9 or so at a church. And then we transitioned to a Baptist church out of that. So it was a Church of God church for a while, and then we switched to a Baptist church. Mainly, my mother loves being a part of the music The music team was really strong there. The guy in charge of it was awesome. They had great kids programs too. So there was a lot of really good reasons to be a part of it. And I think kind of what you were talking about, Austin, with like the first order things and second order things. I think my dad, who was leading our family, was making decisions based on those first order things. And so the second order things, it didn't really matter too much as long as the important stuff was being like lined up on.
That's awesome.
So it gave us a lot of ability to be in a lot of different denominations, just making sure that those priorities were being lined up on. So like, for example, if the kids program was really good or something, or the youth program was really good, then, that made the most sense at the time for us to be part of. The church that we went to when we first went to the Baptist church was in a bit of a transition. The pastor had just stepped down. And so there was an interim guy there. And then whenever he left, that was the change for us. So we left after about a year. During the interim period, we went there, and then he left, and we went to another Baptist church. They had a really good, did you ever do the Awana stuff?
Yeah.
So they had, did you do it, Zach? So there was a great Awana program at this church, and so I was in 5th grade at the time. It was me and my 2 sisters, and so we were all a part of that. Really enjoyed it. And then we were there for about a year, and then we transitioned to a Methodist church, actually, and we were there from 6th grade until I graduated high school, and we were there the longest. And then I went to Western Kentucky to play tennis, and when we came back home, my wife and I, Kara, she went to South, I went to Corbin, and we dated all through high school. She's the only girlfriend I've ever had, and we dated all through high school. And she went to a more charismatic church in London, and so I would go there on Sunday nights, and I went to their youth program too. So I was just all over the place as far as denominations go. And so we went to school together at Western, and then we got married after our sophomore year. But when we came back home after we both graduated in 2013, we were really trying to figure out where we wanted to be. And, it was a really important time for us to make the best decision for our family, which was just us both at the time. We didn't have any kids. And we had come out of a college situation where there was crazy amount of like community, kind of like Zach was talking about. We had to own our own faith. And so we were left with decisions. Okay, parents aren't here. What are we going to do? Are we going to do what we want? Are we going to really press into this Jesus thing and figure that out? We chose that route. So we got super involved with Campus Crusade for Christ all 4 years. And we were just surrounded with crazy amount of community. I mean, there was Bible studies, like it felt like every day. I was playing music there. I grew the most as a musician there, playing at each weekly gathering, singing and playing drums and stuff. And it was just a really great season of growth for us both. And so when we came back home, we really tried to figure out the best route. We strongly considered coming to the Creek, actually. And I just, in my heart at the time, I didn't feel like it was the right time to be there. And so we decided to go to a smaller church that my mom and dad were going to. And we stayed there for probably 3 or so years and had tons of growth at that church as well. And we just kind of got to the point where it was a much smaller church. And so because it was such a smaller church, we didn't realize it at the time, but we had come out of this crazy communal, tons of folks our age, all this accountability, all this stuff. And we go to a small church, and it's basically just the pastor, his wife, a few others, and my personal family. And that was about the extent of our community. And we didn't realize it at the time, but we were starving for community with other people that were in our similar stage of life. At the time, we had our one, very young Jonah, our first kid. And we were just trying to figure out like, what's the best move for him as a child growing up, with kids programs. And we just felt it was a very, very hard decision, but we just felt like, okay, we need to make a change and find some place that we can be and really dig in and get rooted. And we looked at a couple options, and we ended up going to the Creek. And then when we were leaving the service, it was just like, wow, why didn't we come here in the beginning? It almost felt like we had wasted 3 years to me. Now looking back on it, there's been tons of growth at that other church. We love tons of people there. I mean, there was no bad experiences at that other place. I think we were just asking of them something they couldn't give us, physically couldn't give us. And so that first week, I had lunch with Zach on Monday after visiting. And so I immediately knew, like, okay, we need to be here. I want to be connected. I want to be part of the music team. I had lunch with Zach on Monday for lunch. Then that night we were at Austin and Jesse's small group. So we just knew we wanted to get involved. And after all that stuff, it was just like, man, this is the best choice. And I don't know about you guys, but it's kind of transitioning from my personal talk. But in the same vein, I feel like our church, the Creek Church, is a place for people that do have baggage from other churches or scars from other churches, where you're saying it's like a melting pot. People can come together and almost kind of like a hospital heal and kind of work through the issues or questions they have or problems they have with faith and kind of figure it out without being ostracized from the community. You know what I mean? Like, it's welcome to have questions and surround each other up. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Also, I want to apologize if you guys hear a lawnmower in the background, because there's a guy mowing my grass and it's right outside my window.
Is it Trevor? He's taking up mowing.
It's Trevor.
Yeah, it's Pastor Trevor. He just got a lawnmower. He's over here mowing my grass.
He just learned how to mow since quarantine, and he's just going crazy.
Yeah, if you've seen his, he's all about the mowing now. But no, I completely agree with you. I think it is that. And Austin, you mentioned something when you were talking that I thought was interesting too, is, no matter where you are, you feel like we have the right answers. No matter where you are, you feel like you have the answers, or else you would go somewhere that you thought had the answers, right? And so when you're no matter where you're at, and it's probably this way even past faith and theology and that kind of thing, but I think human beings, when you get in a circle, you surround yourself with, more times than not, people who think like you do. And when you're forced to get into a situation where you're surrounded by people who may not think like you do, it's really, really healthy. And I'm processing this right now, even thinking about it. But like when I'm thinking about my daughter, my natural lean is, I want to protect you from things that I don't want you to think are right. And I think that's what happens in church too, is because pastors have a pastor's heart, and they want to protect the people that they've been put in charge of. They want to protect them from something that may influence them in a negative way. And all they know is what they've been accustomed to and what they know. And so they know, my job is to protect you. I want to protect you from outside thought processes or things that may influence you in a way that maybe I'm not informed about. And so I think the motivation behind it is a pure thing. But when you're forced to get into a situation, which I think Pastor Trevor has done a great job at cultivating this in our church, and there's a lot of places like this. I'm not saying that we're the only ones, but when you're forced to be put in a position where you may not agree with the person sitting beside you about certain things as it relates to faith, but you're also called to a higher thing, which is to love that person, then you're almost forced to listen to them. Like Pastor Trevor says that sometimes it's hard to hate up close. So that person that's far away, that you don't have to have face-to-face contact with, you don't have to shake their hand, you don't have to smile at them. It's easy to think, you got your opinion, I got mine, I'm right, you're wrong. There it is. But when you get to know that person and you're walking beside them as you're taking your kids to Kids Creek, right? And you see your kids in there playing when you go pick them up after church, and you're talking with that person and you realize, whoa, they think very different than I do about certain things. It's like that barrier's down, and you're okay with listening, And I do agree with you, Lance. I think that is one of the benefits of what Pastor Trevor has cultivated at our church, and the DNA is, you're welcome to have your own opinion. You're welcome to ask questions, and that's actually a healthy thing. If we can learn to say, you know what, it's good to ask questions. You don't always have to change your mind based on everything that you hear, but learning that ability and that skill to keep the good, let the bad go, without it actually influencing what you think about that person that may have a different opinion than you. I think that's healthy.
Yeah. I think that as it relates to the idea of being somewhere where we have the answers and we think our answers are right and all that sort of thing, my evolution over time, I think, has been the older I get, the more I realize I don't have the answers to most things.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I begin to seek is a place that's honest about that, a place that says, hey, we don't have all the answers. And I think that honestly, Trevor has created that culture because, he's always willing to have those conversations. I mean, I remember one of the first series Jesse and I were exposed to from the Creek was the series called The Gray, where Trevor was going to talk about all these gray issues in Scripture. And I'd never heard any pastor admit that there were things in the Bible that weren't, black or white. I just always heard things preached black and white. And I had these feelings in my heart of like, yeah, I don't know, guys. Like, I feel like this is up for interpretation. And for him to say, yeah, there are some things that people interpret differently and you can't necessarily take a hardline stance and have the answer for. Man, was that attractive and appealing for me because I feel like that was in line with Jesus. And, Jesus didn't give people all the answers. He didn't give them clear answers a lot of the times. And a lot of times we read his answers and we're like, bro, they just lobbed you a softball and you could have just knocked it out of the park and told them exactly. Like the guy that's like, hey, what do I have to do to inherit the kingdom of God? It's like, okay, here you go, Jesus. And then Jesus is like, oh, go sell everything you have. And you're like, what? Wait, hang on. Why didn't you say, well, just believe in me and, all that stuff? Why'd you start with that? So there's confusion in there. There's things that cause me to ask questions. And so finding a place that is open about that and willing to have conversation became a huge part of what I was looking for. And then to your point about pastors and their hearts for people, and the fact that I don't think we intentionally do this, but like you were saying, they want to protect because there's this responsibility pastors have been given to be the shepherd of a flock and to protect them from wolves. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, I think the issue is it's hard work to evaluate the level of danger, so to speak. And there's a line, just like in parenting, there's a line where you can't just protect them from everything always. They become, they reach a certain age or a certain maturity level, and you go, okay, now they could be exposed to this. Not only can they be exposed to it, but they will benefit now from being exposed to this, whereas prior to this could have harmed them because they weren't ready for it. And I think that's just, it's hard work to navigate that as a pastor. It's easier just to say, here's the line and just listen to what I tell you and, whatever. But to truly care and love, I think as a pastor, you have to take the time to evaluate, okay, what is an actual wolf that I need to protect people from? And what are the things that they need to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and parse that out in their own mind and have those conversations with God and their friends and possibly a pastor and ask those questions and help them to mature and actually grow so they're not on milk all their life as well. So I think that's a part of why that happens is pastors are trying to protect people, but not everything's a wolf, and there are first order. I mean, if there are people out there who are teaching, anything other than Jesus for salvation, clearly that's a wolf. We protect from that. There are other things that would qualify as well, but I don't know. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. I think it's very freeing to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's okay to say, I don't know. You don't have to have an answer for every single situation, and you might learn down the road, but right now I don't know. And I think that's important to say to people because you don't want to, what are you going to make up something otherwise, and then you're just giving people false information. And then they're going to maybe even take that into heart and then they're living a life based on something that's not even true.
Yeah.
You've almost done more harm than good.
Yeah.
Do you think that the like root of pastors wanting to protect their people, do you think it's like comes out of fear almost? Like they're afraid that people can't make good decisions or something like protect them from it? Is fear based anywhere in there? You guys think?
I mean, it's hard to say. I'm sure it's on some level their fear plays a role. It almost does in everything, right? I mean, in all areas of our life, if we don't keep it in check, fear has this nagging ability to influence our decision making. And so whether it's a fear of, I think in the church world, and if you have ever worked in church, then this is not going to come as a shock to you. But when you work at a church, there is some level of, okay, if people are leaving, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Right. And then so you're dealing with that pressure, and that's a reality. And it may be a bad thing, but it's a reality nonetheless. And so that's probably a level of fear that plays in. And then you're trying to protect them. So you're trying to protect them, and you're afraid for their own lives, that if you start to believe this way, based on what I've been taught, like we joke around all the time. When I was a kid, I heard somebody say, they're talking about listening to non-Christian music, right? And they say the saying is, you start tapping your foot to the devil's music and he'll have you dancing before you know it. And that's a funny thing, but that mentality is a reality. You start dabbling, and then before you know it, who knows where you're going to end up. I think that is something that plays a role in pastors' minds, you know what I mean? Because they view people as, that's as close a thing as a kid as I got, and I got to protect them. But what you touched on, Austin and Lance, you said it too, and I agree 100%. I think it's super refreshing when you can find a leader with the humility to say, I don't know, because that takes humility. Yeah. Because that person's supposed to have the answers, right? Everybody's looking to them as like, hey, you're the authority on this thing. You're supposed to know. And if that person can have the humility to say, you know what, I don't know. I think that's incredibly attractive in a leader to me. Like I was just thinking while you guys were talking, I during this whole COVID thing, when it first started happening, I was watching like a press conference or something with the mayor of New York City, and they were asking him questions, and he just said, you know what, I don't know. We're trying our best, but right now I just don't know. And to me, that was more reassuring than him trying to rip off some kind of answer that could have been true, maybe it wasn't. But for him to say, you know what, right now we're trying our best, but we don't know. That gave me more peace than him saying, some crazy answer that wasn't true just because he needed to have an answer. And from a leadership perspective, I think it's incredibly mature and shows a lot of humility for somebody to say on that, you know what, I just don't know right now. I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that pastors, it is so important for pastors or anyone who's leading, but I think pastors especially, because there is the potential for there to be a separation in people's minds between a pastor or an evangelist or, one who stands and speaks and brings the word, There's this idea that they have some level of relationship with God that, other people don't or whatever. And I think when you're willing to, well, first of all, when you are unwilling to admit that you don't have the answers, you reinforce that wall. You pour concrete in the rebar structure that's there that people are trying to look through. Now it's full of concrete, and they can't even relate to you. They can't get to you. You can't get to them. Maybe as equally important. So having the ability to do that and having the humility, like you said, Zach, to do that, I think is just so important at leveling the playing field and helping people to realize, like, bro, I'm just a dude. I'm just a guy. Like, I feel like the Lord has called me to do this, but from my perspective, I feel like he's called all of us to do this wherever we are. And I just happen to be doing it, in an organization that does this. That's what they do. You're supposed to be doing this in your organization, even if it makes, fans. I don't know. So, it levels the playing field. It lets people know, hey, I'm human. I don't have all the answers, because people know that. Everybody knows that you don't have all the answers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in their heart of hearts, they understand that, and they know that. So it just makes you honest and real. And boy, don't we all love to follow someone who's honest as opposed to somebody who's full of stuff.
Right. I can see that carrying over into their own personal lives, of carrying the weight of like, man, if I don't have it together right now, what are people going to think?
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to leave? It stems back to the other fear of other things.
Yeah.
If I don't have the answer to the question, that's a problem. But if I don't have every single aspect of my life buttoned up, if my kids aren't behaving well, if my marriage isn't doing well, whatever, that's a real problem.
Sure.
Do you think that carries like even more weight? Because, both you guys are ordained, I would imagine, right? As far as being pastors.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that you're walking around with a heavier weight on your shoulders of like, man, stuff needs to look good from the outside looking in,
I mean, I think the temptation is definitely there. Whether I give myself to it or not, it's always there. You know what I mean? Like, I can only speak for myself, but I try to keep that in check the best that I can. And honestly, and this is just my opinion, but if I'm living my life, sure, I'm not perfect. I mean, I'm not perfect at all, but if I'm living my life the best that I can in a way that I feel like is the way that God has called me to live, I shouldn't have to worry about all that other stuff. You know what I mean? The extra pressures that I could put on myself or whatever it is. If I'm living in a way that is what the Bible would call my true and authentic act of worship, which is my body as a living sacrifice to God, and say, hey man, this life is yours. I'm gonna try my best to live it the way you called me to live it. I feel like that all that other stuff kind of takes care of itself. You know what I mean? Like, it takes care because that's the way that I've chosen to live and try my best to do it. And by the grace of God, so in some ways accomplish it. Obviously we all fail. I do for sure. I was going to tell a funny story a minute ago when Austin was talking about getting saved because he didn't want to go to hell. He got scared. They make fun of me all the time.
I can't wait.
Go ahead.
For those of you who don't know me, I'll go ahead and tell it. Just
You got to go full. Don't hold back either.
Do what?
Don't hold back.
on it.
Tell it.
So for those of you who don't know me, there are, in large part, I've tried my best to be a good kid, and so partly because I love my mom so much that I didn't want to disappoint her, and I lived that way. It wasn't because I wanted to be a good kid. It was more like I love my mom, and I'm trying to make sure she's not upset with me. Anyways, and so I didn't grow up in a family. None of them curse or anything like that. My grandparents, my uncles, aunts, cousins, none of them do, and definitely on my mom. So I didn't really grow up around that. And when I was probably 11, 12, 13, something like that, if my mom's listening to the story, I don't even think I've told her this story.
Oh gosh.
But so I started hanging out with these friends of mine who, it didn't bother them to use profanity at all. So at first I was like, whoa, these kids are
Worldlians.
Little
these
hellions.
kids are bad kids.
Pagans.
You know what I mean? They ain't smoking cigarettes, but they're putting little twigs in their mouth and lighting them. Might as well be. So I was hanging around that, and I just dipped my toes in the water.
Started tapping your toe to the devil's music.
Tapping your toe.
That's right. And before you know it, I look back and I was like, man, I've said a few words that are not pleasing. And so back at the time, my mom took me to this play. I don't know if it still happens, but it's called Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames. It's a play. I'm telling you what, powerful conviction. So I'm at this play, right? And I know this week that I've said a few words that I shouldn't have. So I'm watching this play, and it's showing hell, and it's like, it's fire, and it's brimstone, and there's pain, and there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. I feel like I'm there. And I'm telling you, my little heart, my 12-year-old heart is pounding in my chest, right? And I'm like, oh my, like this could happen. I gotta give my life to Jesus. I gotta repent. I gotta repent. So I'm sitting there in my own little heart and head, I'm repenting. And on the way out to the car, I'm weeping. I'm literally weeping. I'm crying. And my mom's like, what is wrong with you? Like, what is, are you okay? What's wrong? And I turned to her and I said, Mom, I've been cussing.
Oh boy.
So I told her I've been cussing, and looked at me, and I'm sure she's trying to hold back, just laughing at me, but she understands that what I'm feeling is real. Like, that was real for me. And so I told her I'd been cussed. She said, "Listen, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Just kind of don't do it again." But I'm telling you what, Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames convicted my little 12-year-old heart to the core, and it changed me.
Dude, that play saved a ton of people. I
Changed.
mean, maybe for the wrong reasons, whatever. It's definitely been effective. I've seen it too myself.
Oh man.
Have you? Question: how many times have you guys been saved? Because it's been a ton for me.
Here's a
Growing
question.
up in a Pentecostal church, I've probably been saved 150 times or more. Anytime I went to bed at night when I was a kid, just in case, gave my heart to the Lord. If
Just
I'd
in
done
case.
something, anything
Yeah.
I recognize wrong,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh man,
Lord,
gotta
if
get
I-
saved.
yeah.
Gotta get saved just
Yeah,
in case.
if I didn't mean it, if I didn't really mean it last time, Lord,
Yeah.
I mean it this time.
Do you know that you know that you know that you know?
We used to
You
sing
made
this.
that walk forward a bunch.
We used to sing this song and called "It Was on a Monday" or whatever, and like anytime we would have a dinner at the church or whatever, we'd always sing it, and people would. So they'd be like, "It was on a," and then you'd say the day that you accepted Jesus. And so they would go through all the days of the week. And if you didn't remember, which I didn't remember, I think it was a Wednesday. But anyway, if you didn't remember, they'd had one at the end. They'd say, "It was on a someday somebody touched me." And you would sing the whole song. Anyway.
I tell you what, if you went to a Pentecostal church, it's guaranteed that it was a Sunday night.
Oh,
Yeah.
Let me
Spirit
tell you
moved
something.
at the night.
If you're looking for a church service, as soon as church is getting up and going again, hit up a Sunday night somewhere. That's where the real action happens.
The Spirit Nocturnal?
Hey, listen, those faithful people show up at that, and they're ready to rock.
Get on you.
They're getting somewhere.
Oh, man. What were we even talking about?
How many times have you been saved, Austin? Let's get it out there.
No, well, I don't think there's an answer to that question. I have a rebuttal question. I want to answer that question
Okay.
by asking you this question.
Okay.
Were you saved? Are you being saved? Or will you be saved?
Jeez.
Come on now. Here's a theology test, Lance. Let's see where you're going.
I'm going to fail that test. I would say that I got born again, and that's about it.
How can one
I
go
would
back
say
into their mother and
I
be
would-
born again?
That's a great question. You have to ask Jesus about that one.
A man named Nicodemus asked that one time.
Yeah, for real.
As
I don't know.
far as the how many
Good
times
question.
I've been saved thing, I think that's a hilarious question, and it is. You know how you guys know how like in the church world we've got our own jokes.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like there's funny stuff in the church world that only you think is funny if you've been in church for a while. And if new people are coming in, they didn't grow up in church, and you try to like come off with one of them, they just look at you like this. Like what do you what why is that supposed to be funny?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a culture in and of itself, and I think that how many times you've been saved one is for sure one of those. If you're listening and you've recently become a Christian, Lance is joking about the how many times you've been
Oh
saved.
yeah, we should probably clarify that.
Oh boy. So Zach's story about the Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames, which is a classic, by the way, reminded me of when I was a kid one time. This is totally not spiritual. Everything's spiritual. But anyway, I had me a little pellet gun. I went out in the backyard and I was shooting birds. And they had some woods behind our house, so I'd get back there a little bit by the creek. And I shot one from a distance, hit the thing, of course, because I'm an excellent marksman, and went over to it, and I realized it was a cardinal. And so in the state of Kentucky, that's the state bird, and so it's against the law to kill a cardinal. So I my little self freaked out, and I ran back to the house and put my pellet gun away, and I went to my room, and I was like terrified. I was convinced that any minute the doorbell was going to ring, and there was going to be a state trooper standing there, and he's going to be like,
On those Cardinals, man.
Mr. Upchurch, is your son home? I thought I was going to jail, boys. I thought I was going to the pen.
I was actually just watching Boy Meets World last night, and that happened in the episode. Sean, if you know Sean, he put a cherry bomb in a mailbox.
Mm.
And he was like, Corey, I've crossed the line.
Yep, that is
I've
crossing
crossed the line from just like mischief to I'm going to jail, man. This is serious. And he ends up just getting grounded for a month. But I'm sure you felt that way. I killed the state bird.
Oh yeah,
I crossed the line.
I crossed the line. I thought for sure the
It
authorities.
was a mistake, but nonetheless, I crossed it.
Back to Lance's question, I think I sort of alluded to that a minute ago. Is like along my faith journey, I would question whether or not I really meant it or whatever. And I think, as you grow and you mature in your faith, and as you read scripture and listen to good teaching and have good conversation, you start to learn. You start to realize that, that's the reason I asked you that follow-up question, Lance, is that what I believe is that I was saved, I am being saved, and I will be saved. That it's a three-part deal, and that the work of Jesus on the cross was not limited to one moment in my life. I think the scope of what he did, we super understand and undervalue and underrealize the power of what happened in that moment that transcends time and transcends every moment of our life. That, yeah, I think I was saved then, and I think that I am being saved. I'm being transformed by the renewing of my mind, and I think that my spirit will be saved. I don't know. I mean,
so you don't think your spirit's one with God right now, or saved right now?
Yeah, probably that's not the right. That wasn't the right.
I would say your spirit is one with God. Your spirit is saved. Your mind, your soul, your emotions are being renewed.
My body,
and then your body will
be
glorified. Yeah, on the other side of heaven.
Yes, I misspoke.
It's okay, man. Just trying to clear it up for the people.
I do have all the answers, though.
We have a running joke in our friend group that Austin doesn't know how to read. And honestly, for about a month, we had Lance's wife, Kara, convinced that it was true. She was really concerned about Austin. Like, what do you guys mean he can't read? He has to be able to read. We're all like, no, sorry. He can't. He's just memorized some words. Yeah. He can't. And she was all on board there for a minute, and then obviously came around because she's smart. But
she's like buying Hooked on Phonics books and sending them over to their house and stuff.
That's a joke that we all have going with Austin, that he just doesn't know how to read. He's just memorized a couple words.
All I did was memorize all those little pictures. I think they call them letters, and then the sounds they make. So I'm barely know how to read. But it's definitely a running joke, and it is fun. But anytime somebody new comes to the office or the church building or whatever, and they're going to interact with Zach or anybody that's in on this joke, I will always do the same thing to them, unbeknownst to them. I'll be like, now listen, that's Zach. He doesn't know how to read, but he's from Clay County. And I'll say, but he's really sensitive about it, so don't say anything about it.
If it's true, it's the first I'm hearing about this, so I hope it is.
It's true. It's true. I'll do it. I've done it plenty of times.
That's hilarious.
There he is.
But so along those lines, when they started this joke about me not being able to read, when we have staff meetings, during that period of time, Pastor Trevor was really pushing us to be making sure we're reading, and talking about leadership and leaders are readers and all this sort of thing. And I would tell Zach and them, there's this comedian that I love. His name is Brian Regan. You should definitely check him out if you haven't. But he does this bit about reading, and in the bit, he's talking about being in this counterpoint argument with some professor. And he's just talking about I can read. I read goodly. And then he said, I don't read good enough to be in a counterpoint with a professor, And he gives this big elaborate answer from the professor. And then they go, what do you think, Brian? And he says, reading ain't never done nothing for nobody. So I kept teasing Zach and them, saying the next time, I said, every time Trevor mentions that we need to be reading, it takes everything in me not to stand up and be like, reading ain't never done nothing for nobody.
Oh boy, I'm waiting for the day that happens. I'm telling you what, if you ever do that in a staff meeting, I'm gonna just live in that moment.
It's going to be a good moment if it
It's
happens.
great.
Trevor's going to kill me. So, but that'll be a fun day.
That will be fun. Let me ask you guys this. I had small group last night over Zoom, and I was asking them this, and their answer really surprised me, honestly. But I asked them, do you guys think when this is all over, are you going to be hesitant to like be in large gatherings? Like, are you going to be hesitant to go to events and be in large gatherings, even come to church? Are you going to be hesitant? And they all said yes. They all said yes. They were all like, yeah, I feel like I'm going to be hesitant about that. What do you guys think? I mean, I was kind of shocked, honestly, by the answer, just because I don't know. I don't. Me and Lance had talked about this, but I told him, he was asking me what I thought about how this is all going to be when it's over, and I said, honestly, I think in large part it's going to affect our lives for a little while, and then it's going to be like business as usual. Just get back to it. Like, okay, now we're back, and it's like, okay, that thing's a thing in the past, and now we're on, and it's like we quickly forgot. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope like it really affects us in a positive way, but I don't know that it will. But anyways, I was so shocked that all of them said, yeah, I'm really going to be hesitant about large gatherings, and I think it's really going to affect how I deal with people in general, with like, numbers of people that are maybe more than 10 or 12 people. What do you guys think about that? Or do you think it's going to affect you guys?
What do you think, Austin?
I think it's going to be on people's minds. I think it's going to be on my mind. I would like to resist I feel like it's definitely based out of fear, and there's healthy fear as well. And just living within reality doesn't always mean that you're just, a fearful person. So, I don't know where I am with the idea that things are going to be forever different after this pandemic. I think in certain ways, but I don't know if I'm totally there yet on the idea that there are going to be significant cultural differences in America after this that last, if that makes any sense. I do think that as we re-enter, I think there's going to be a battle going on in everybody's mind, between a ping pong, which is kind of how it's been for me this whole time, between like, okay, this is very serious. I don't necessarily want to go in large group, but then there's also this like, I need community, I need people, I need interaction. I'm sick and tired of being, cooped up and I need to get out there and just, that's how I am right now. I'm like, one day I'm like, man, I got to be really careful and safe because of my immune system, and I need to protect my family and all these things, and that trumps everything. And then a few days later, I'm like, I gotta go, like, do something, forget it. I gotta go to work or whatever, do what I gotta do. So I think there's going to be a sense of people kind of bouncing back and forth and not sure. I do think that as a whole, probably, I feel like more people than not, the majority of people are going to have reservations about jumping back into a large group. And I think that's probably safe and good and is justified. So how long that will last and how long the effects of that will last, I don't know. What implications that will have on how we do church, how people do church, or any of that thing. At this point, I don't know if I see long-term effects.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like, I don't know that I don't think I feel like, okay, people aren't ever really going to return. Like, I don't think there's like, okay, 20% of people are never going to go back to church because of this. I just don't think that that's the case. And I definitely could be wrong, but I'm not there.
Yeah. What do you think, Lance? Is it going to affect you at all?
Yeah. Me personally, no way. But I don't know. I'm probably on the front, like the edge of the most extreme extroverts. But I think there'll be a healthy level of awareness about germs just generally that people will probably carry with them, in terms of, I'm walking into a store, I'm putting my PIN code and my card on the little checkout thing. that's probably got a bunch of germs on it. I should probably sanitize my hands or something after it, or I'm grabbing doorknobs to public places. I think people will probably have pause and be like, okay, I probably should clean my hands because I definitely picked up germs when I grabbed this thing, or even shaking people's hands. I'm probably with these contacts. I think people will probably carry that aspect with them and maybe to a really healthy level. But as far as not even engaging in shaking hands or not even engaging in being in public environments, I think people maybe in the very beginning will be hesitant, but I think we need each other, man. Like, we're better together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, humanity needs each other. Isolation is a really dangerous place to be for people. I mean, I think everybody feels that when they're at home all day, you know? I mean, this is like a side note. When I was in college, Kara, I taught tennis lessons to make money in the summer when Kara and I were married. And we lived in Bowling Green in an apartment. And she would babysit every day. But there would be days where I didn't have any tennis lessons scheduled. So there was a season there where it was like a couple days, I was just in the house playing video games all day. And I felt the heaviness like kind of sit in. My personality started to change. Like, I felt almost borderline depressed. I didn't really recognize what it was. And I've got to the point where I was like, man, I have to get outside at least one time a day and go for a run or something. You know, campus wasn't as busy because it was in summer, so there wasn't as many people outside. And I started making those changes, but I could easily see myself slipping into like a darkness by being inside all day and not having any interactions with people outside of Kara when she came home during those days where there would be no tennis. And I could easily see people feeling that at home, you know, even if they're listening to the podcast right now at home. I could easily see that kind of creep in and recognizing, okay, that's not me. That's something else that's kind of affecting me. I've got to find ways to get outside of these walls and be in the sun and do some sort of exercise or walk through the neighborhood or whatever. I think that's going to be a really life-giving thing for people during this specific season. I definitely felt it, and that's completely outside of my personality, those feelings. And so, you know, recognizing where those voices are coming from or that heaviness comes from, and then, you know, speaking against those and then making steps to like change those, I think is really important during times like this. I mean, have you guys felt that at all? Probably Austin more than anybody because of his immune system thing. Do you feel that like creep in when you're just at home all day in the basement there with Santa Claus and the elves?
No, I think everybody does. I think that's just part of the human condition, that when isolation is just not a good thing, and making sure that you're on top of that and you're aware of that. But I've definitely felt, I think that's part of why I ping pong back and forth, because I'll be like, okay, this is serious. I'm staying home, all that. And then I'm like, man, for me, it's probably more like, I got to go to work. You know, I got to go do something, you know, like if they're there shooting this thing, like I want to be there. I want to be a part of that. I want to put my, you know, contribution in and, you know, have that responsibility. That's what, you know, I think helps give your life meaning. Not that you don't have responsibility at home, and not that I haven't been working from home, and I'm doing plenty here. But yeah, there's definitely an element of, okay, there's definitely times to just, all right, you know, it's time to go do something else, to get out to. So, you know, like, been going out on these pretty days with the girls, and kicking the soccer ball, throwing a frisbee, pulling them around in a wagon, taking walks, doing all that sort of thing. You know, we'll go out and take a drive every now and then. We order food in every now and then, that sort of thing. And the opportunities I've had to actually go to our broadcast campus in London and participate in things, I've done that a couple times in limited capacities, and it seems like I'm going to be able to do that again here coming up soon. So, but yeah, I do think that for everybody, you know, isolation is a bad thing, and that in this time more than any, it's important that we're giving ourselves responsibility and things to do. Even if that's just make yourself a schedule and follow it, just make it up. You know, mop the floors again. I've been mopping the floors like crazy, and you know, whatever. Just do something. Have responsibility. You know, I just feel like without responsibility, your life just sort of loses meaning, and you begin to internally psychologically, when you don't have responsibility, when you're not contributing to the world, I do think you become depressed and you start to feel as if your life does not have a purpose and those sorts of things. And then that becomes a downward spiral that's really hard to get out of, because now when you're depressed, you don't feel like doing things. You want to lay around, you want to sleep all day, you want to mope around, you want to talk about how bad things are. So now you're in this feedback loop of like, my life's bad and we're never going to get out of this. And if I go out, I'm going to get sick. And, so you're just like digging yourself further and further down. So that's kind of where I stand with it. Yeah, I definitely am aware of it and deal with it. But I do feel like I'm fairly self-aware to the extent that I don't mind dropping what I'm doing and going and getting some relief, getting out there and the sun helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does.
The sun definitely helps.
I think it goes back to what Zach was talking about with Baby Wise last week. I think that us as adults too need routine.
Yeah.
A healthy routine. The babies need it for their sleep schedules and eating schedules and stuff like that. But I mean, that doesn't have to stop when you become an adult.
Mm-hmm.
There's healthy things that you can add into your life to bring, positivity and value to your day so you can get the most out of it. And just go in and with the flow, maybe for a small season is okay. But, over time, that could really rob you of some goodness that you could be experiencing, or, a good habit that you could create. That's probably one thing I would encourage people is like, look for something that you can do on a daily regimented schedule that's going to provide value.
Yep.
Whether it is being in a Bible reading plan on the YouVersion app or something. First thing in the morning, when you're having your coffee, you're getting up, first thing you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you're on a morning schedule, every other day I'm going to work out with my spouse and we're just going to do a home workout together. Something to like schedule you out for the day,
Yeah, something to look forward to.
Yeah.
It's sort of a micro example or application of where there's no vision, people perish. When you have nothing to look forward to, when you're not looking toward the future for something, you just sort of die.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys feel like, since you've been in this thing, like your spiritual habits or disciplines have shifted? Everybody's devotional life looks different, like everyone's does, and that's fine. But mine is I need to be alone, and I need to be in a place where I can turn up music, or I can be loud, or whatever. I can move around. I need space. I need some space. And when I'm at home, it's hard because obviously Ariel and Sadie are here. It's hard because, one, I'm having to manage. Okay, I'm on the clock to some extent. You know what I mean? Like I'm at work, even though I'm at home. And so Sadie's in there, or Ariel's in there feeding Sadie, and I want to be in there help her, but I'm at work and I need to be on a Zoom call and or something to do with planning center or whatever it is, working on tracks, whatever. But in the back of my head, there's this pressure to, you're here, you need to go help. You need to go help your wife. I hear Sadie in there crying. I need to go help Ariel. When I'm not here, then I don't feel that pressure because I don't know what's happening. But being at the house, that is hard for me to make a distinction. And it's a little bit like that with my own devotional life, because Ariel would be fine if I said, you know what, I need to go have some time with the Lord. She would be fine with that 100%. But at the same time, in the back of my head, I'm like, yes, that's important to have that time with the Lord. But I feel this pressure to help her take care of Sadie because I'm here. I'm here, so I need the help. Mm-hmm. And in my heart and in my head, I know there's nothing more important than my relationship with the Lord. And the closer I am to Him, the better father I'm going to be to Sadie and the better husband I'm going to be to Ariel. But managing that time in real life has been difficult for me because I'm here physically in this place. So it's like to leave them and go do this feels like I'm saying, in some ways, I need to do this and I'll be back in a minute, which feels like I'm choosing myself over them. I know that's not true, but it's like this battle in my head, and it's been a little bit a little bit difficult, honestly, if I'm being 100% honest, to keep that on track. And it's caused me to sometimes feel a little bit distant and disconnected and feel like, man, you know what? Like, I'm not as close to the Lord through this as I should be. Like, I feel like I should be pressing in more. And for some reason, I feel like I'm kind of on the back seat.
Yeah, it's a different season for sure. One thing I thought while you were talking there was, you said something to the tune of, I know that I will be, the closer I am to the Lord, the better father and husband I'll be. The question that popped into my mind was, is it possible that the better husband and father that you are during this season, the closer to the Lord you'll be? And I was thinking through like the whole idea that Pastor Trevor's taught and Scripture teaches of, you can't love God more than you love people, that sort of thing, like that loving them is the expression of loving him or whatever. That's how he has asked us to love him best, with Peter. And Peter's like trying to get him to understand, Lord, don't you know that I love you? And Jesus like, do you love me? That whole idea of like, Peter, what I'm asking you to do is to go love people, go feed my sheep, go do these things. Maybe this is a season where your devotion to God looks a little different. And maybe the most spiritual thing we can do right now is take that time and invest it in our family. I don't know. I'm not saying that's the case. I just know like I tend to get that legalistic, checklist mentality, discipline mentality of like, okay, I'm not doing this specific thing that checks that box of devotion to the Lord. And whenever I start feeling that way, I always know that I got to check my thoughts and my motives and my heart, because it's not about that. It's not about checking a box. It's not about making sure that I got up at this time and prayed. It's about a living, breathing, active relationship with God. And in any relationship, there are seasons and at points in time we interact differently based on, what's going on around us. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just throwing stuff. I'm thinking out loud.
No, I think you are saying something right there. I think, like, for example, earlier we were talking about kind of our experience in church and all that stuff. And when I was in college and that senior year where I said, I'm going to dedicate myself, I didn't have any responsibility. I didn't have a job.
Mm-hmm.
I had school. That's it.
Yep.
And to be honest with you, I was not fully applying myself. And so I had a lot of time. And during that season, even after graduating from college, it was a little bit before I found a job. And so I had all the time that I wanted to do whatever I wanted to, as far as like how much time I was giving to all. The only language I know for it is like spiritual disciplines. It's how we would categorize it, I think. And so coming out of that into a new season where maybe that time isn't there, you're right. There is a pressure to do things like you've always done them. And if you don't, you feel like you're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But in a relationship with the Lord, I think it is growth, because you're right. And we talked about it a little bit last week. If we're willing to listen, he's willing to talk, no matter if we got our eyes closed or we're feeding a baby.
Right.
And I think that's a beautiful lesson that we can learn, because if we're willing to stay connected to that vine, then we got the opportunity to get life from it all day long.
Right.
But it's that moment where we say, you know what, I'm going to actually disconnect. Like, I'm turning my heart away to go do something. But as long as we got our heart towards him, then I think that is the most important thing. And that's a natural thing.
Yep.
But that temptation to say, my spiritual life doesn't look like it did in that season, so I must be doing it wrong.
Yep.
I think that's where we fall. That's a trap.
Definitely.
I don't think that's not of God. But I think you're saying something that, it is different from season to season, and having the mindset to say, and the mentality to say, yes, this is different, but Lord, my desire is to still be connected.
Yep.
Like, how can we make this work? Because I might love to go spend an hour with my guitar just worshiping by myself, but I don't have that time anymore. And that doesn't mean I should feel guilt because of it.
Right.
It just means I got to figure out a way to stay connected throughout the day.
That's right.
I in the same kind of vein, whenever I was like owning my own faith in college and stuff like that, coming out of it, even in high school a little bit, I was battling the whole legalism thing as far as like routine and being in the word or devotions and stuff like that. And I would kind of go in and out of consistency with it. And I think part of the problem is there was a part of me that really wanted to reject any sort of notion that if I do this action, then God's going to be happier with me. Right. Or that our relationship will be better. Oh, Lance read the Bible today. He read a chapter of the Bible today. Wow, he's really doing a good job. And so I wanted to push so hard against that. I did not want to do any sort of, reading the word or whatever based on the idea that it was going to improve God's view of me, for example. I wanted to do it because I felt like I wanted to do it, not out of obligation. And so what I've learned, though, over the years is if I just go off of that notion, I'm probably never going to actually start doing it. At some point, you have to create the discipline to say, I'm just going to make this a part of my routine. Even if in the beginning I'm not doing it for the right reasons, I can get that caught up later. I just have to create the scheduling saying that this is of value and it's important. I need to do it. So that's where I've grown to now, to where now it's just part of my routine. The last thing I'm thinking about is I'm doing this and God's happier with me. I'm just doing it because I see that it has value now. But it had to start with a decision of like, I have to create this discipline and margin in my schedule.
Yeah.
But I wanted to push so hard against that like obligation of like, oh, I need to do this because God's going to love me more. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I heard a guy say one time, and I as soon as I heard it, I was like, I connect with that 100%. I believe that. He was talking with people about reading the Bible, and he said, you might say, what's the point of reading? I don't remember what I read 2 days ago. And he said, I don't remember what I ate last week, but it nourished me to get to this point that I'm living today. And I think that is so powerful that you might not remember everything that you read when you read the Bible. You may not remember it all, but if you believe in faith that thing has power to nourish your spirit and soul, then it has that. And you have to just say, you know what? I'm devoting myself to this with the belief that it has a potential no different than I do when I eat. It sustains me to get to the next day. And so that means it's important. And just because I don't remember it all doesn't mean it doesn't have potential and isn't powerful and have value. So I heard that, and it's just stuck with me because I think it's so true. And it's one of those things that we kind of do push back with, like, I don't remember it, so what's the point? I don't remember everything Pastor Trevor's ever preached, but that doesn't mean it didn't benefit me.
Yeah.
I don't remember every sermon I've ever heard. I don't even remember every word that God has spoken directly to me. Those moments where you feel like, man, God spoke to me. I don't remember all those, but it sustained me, and I believe it had value. And so I think that's a powerful mentality to have. It's just like, I'm doing this because I believe that it has potential.
Mm-hmm. Church, thoughts?
Hit the clap button.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Those were my thoughts, quite honestly. Oh, boy. All right. Well, fellas, it's been good.
It's been good.
It's been fun.
I don't know what the title for this week is. I really don't know. At this point, it's not just coming to me. Maybe I've been cussing.
That definitely can be part of it. Definitely could be part of it. Cussing at the gates. Cussing at heaven's gates.
I've been cussing.
Heaven's gate tells flames.
Zach's been cussing.
I ain't, Mom. I ain't been cussing.
I'm going to make sure your mom doesn't see this. I can't imagine how her heart will break.
She will be broken. I'm telling you what. In that woman's eyes, I'm pure as the driven snow.
Jeez. That's
all right,
pure.
Fellas. Thank you for your time. Lance, thank you for your deep well of knowledge. Golly.
Oh,
man, lifting water bottles will really get you in shape. Matter of fact, you said
With
you
the
did.
babies, dude. I got three of them.
When you said you did tennis lessons, I was like, I didn't realize there were that many aspiring tennis water boys.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of doctors' kids out there.
What goes into a training session for a water boy? What do you?
Well, you got to work on your speed because you got to get out to the player. So that's number one. Number two, you got to make sure that the water bottles are fully filled with water.
Fully filled.
Make sure, fully filled, just like your spirit. And you also have to make sure that the water is perfectly chilled because you got to
stay out of the way.
And you got to get out of the way.
That's right.
Get out of the way.
That's right.
You don't hang.
Well, folks, this has been an interesting one. We appreciate you listening. We want you to like, subscribe, share. Love you. We'll see you back next time.